Hey, good morning, everybody. Look who I brought. Nick's
Morning,
here.
everyone.
Nick Bobzien's here. We're going to get started in just a minute. It's 10:59, but I think this class is really fun for a couple of reasons. But hopefully the title caught your attention because it caught Nick's attention. That's why he's here.
Yeah, it was an interesting email I sent back to Christian saying, "What are you doing?"
What are you doing? So the title was Manipulating MLS ? He doesn't want you doing that. I don't want you doing that. And I'm going to explain why. And we're going to give you alternatives. And one of the things I'm most excited about is, I can tell you the legal side of it. We can go through the guidelines. You can do that too. But really, I want Nick to show us, all right, if these are the guidelines, how do you have success within them? How do you use this to your advantage? How do you kind of rely on your salesmanship to get deals across? And what do you think of listings that have come on the market and off the market and on the market? And just how do you play that? Because to me, it's all about how you couch it. It's going back to your salesmanship.
Correct.
Cool. So we've got a couple minutes, but I'm just going to let more people join. But if you guys have questions, if you have concerns, if you want to kind of give us some scenarios, we can go through it together with you. I'm excited about this one. So
should be interesting.
Should be interesting, right? Yeah, that's what Nick kept saying. And so he said, well, what are we going to talk about next week? And I said, dethroning a sitting president. That's what we'll talk about next week. So I'm excited for this one.
I may or may not be okay with that.
You may or may not be okay with that. So I might as well kind of get us started on this one. Let me make sure I'm live here. And for those who haven't been on this class before, I do post this on YouTube. I'll have it available after class. So if you miss this or you have to leave a little bit earlier, you can always catch up on it later or kind of brush up on it. And then separately, feel free to contact Nick. He loves your questions. That's what a president does, right?
I do take questions. I do take phone calls.
I do as well. So feel free to reach out to any of us. So Nick, I didn't prep you on any of this. So my question to you is, you've been involved with NABOR almost 10 years, right? Just about?
Yep, 20, pretty much 2013 is when I started.
So my question, not having been in your shoes and knowing kind of what it's like to be a real estate agent and using NABOR to your best advantage, what is the benefit of being as involved as you are in NABOR as a real estate agent? Why did you get involved? Where has it kind of taken you?
Well, I think for me, the networking side is, I think, very valuable there. There's a lot of different events we do, membership meetings, membership events, membership appreciation, all the education classes. I got involved in 2013 on the YPN committee. At the time, I got licensed in 2005, and a lot of those of you that have been here for a long time know there was not a lot of young realtors back in those days. So in 2010, I started meeting a few of them. In 2013, I got on the YPN committee. And for me, it was nice to be around and meet other young realtors, realtors that I could bounce ideas off of and experiences off of and stuff like that to, how did you break into this market as a young person in this town, dealing with a lot of retirees and second home buyers and stuff like that. How did you break into it? So it was kind of fun to almost have like roundtable discussions. Obviously, we did it at the bar a lot of time over cocktails, which was nice too. But it was fun to just kind of get that understanding and feedback from others.
Well, I think the YPN program is really active. There was an event just a couple of weeks ago. It was coffee. It was like 8 or 8:30 in the morning. Coffee up at Mercado. And that's a really cool event. I'm excited to hopefully be more involved in it. But it's
they do those quarterly.
Pretty informal, right? I mean, it's come and show up. You're gonna have speakers, and I'm sure it could be a good way. So I love that. So that's how you kind of got broken into it. It kind of normalizes things for you, right? Like it just puts it in perspective.
Much more sense of reality of like I said, dealing with other people in this industry that is, the average age. I think Florida Realtors came out with the average, or NAR, one or the other, came out with it. The average realtor is like 58 years old or 55 years old, something like that. So, for the YPNers, which is technically 40 and under, and it's it's a rarity, so to speak. So it's kind of nice to have the camaraderie with some of them and kind of get to know them, and again bounce ideas off each other, and past experiences and what worked, what doesn't work, and how did you get through certain situations.
So that was your gateway drug. You
Yep.
get in there, and then where do you go from there? How does that?
So from there, I just kept getting involved. Mike Hughes was one who was kind of pushing me to try out the Leadership Academy, which I did that in 2014. From there, I got to know a lot more about the board, about the MLS side, and I had the opportunity to attend every single committee meeting at one point throughout the 6-month summer program, which was interesting. I found out a lot of committees that I didn't even know about, and got an understanding of what they did. And it was kind of this passion. I got into MLS committee, I got onto Budget and Finance committee. I tried for a couple years to get onto legal resources, which I finally did, which was wonderful. And but
it is a very cool committee.
It's
This
an
is my
interesting
first
committee.
year on it.
Yeah,
It's very collaborative. You show up, you have people from every different brokerage, you have attorneys from different law firms,
Yep.
and you get in the room and you're on the same team for the first time,
Yeah.
potentially ever.
Competitors working together.
Competitors working together, everyone's brings something different to the table.
Very much.
It's really kind of neat. And they do a very important function for the committee.
And then just kind of took it, from there into those couple committees, and got on to apply for the board for the 2016 year, and got accepted, and been there ever since, and was treasurer for 2 years on the board, and then president-elect last year, and now president of the board this year. So following in some good footsteps.
Well, I think the thing I notice is that you treat it like a full-time gig, right? Because it is
Like a full-time gig. It can be. It's
Well, I don't mean just NABOR, I mean your career.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Your real
And
estate
that's
career.
where, the education that you get in the real estate industry overall, the travel opportunities we do to Florida Realtors in Orlando twice a year. We hear a lot of the issues that are happening around the state. We hear about them in advance and kind of start to prep for them and stuff. Mike Hughes is one of them at the state level. The wire fraud that started back in 2017, 2018, 2019.
Yeah.
We knew about it 4 or 5 months before it really even came to Naples, by other brokers over in the Miami area.
Yeah.
So it's stuff like that. You network around the state. I mean, I've paid a lot of referral fees to other agents around the state, and I've also collected. So it's kind of nice to have that. Yes, it's really nice to have that additional benefit, because I've got buyers that come in here and they look here and they also want to see Sarasota, and they're also looking at like Jupiter area.
Yeah.
Some places. So it's nice to have other realtors that around the state to be able to refer business to and from.
Yeah, and I think that is kind of how you bring your game to the next level. Is that you're very connected. That if you haven't seen it before, someone who may have.
Mhm.
And I work the same way. So I used to practice at a large firm in Georgia, in Atlanta, and it was really great to have that shared experience.
Yeah.
And then you join the local bar boards, and the Florida bar, the Georgia bar, and you can start to really expand. And you're just laying breadcrumbs, right?
Correct.
Some things are going to pan out, and other things it's a waste of your time. But collectively, it's been a huge promotion for you.
Yeah, I mean, just with the board, through committees and stuff like that, it's a name recognition. Your name's up there, people know you, people learn, who you are, respect you, and get your reputation. These last 2 years of 20 through 2022 with COVID, and the crazy real estate market we dealt with, there was a lot of realtors, listings that I talked with. We had multiple offers, and they knew me, they knew how I did business, and they knew pretty much it's, if I'm bringing a solid buyer, it's a done deal. So sometimes, it was my buyer's offer that got through, beating out 10, 11 others, and it wasn't the price.
Yeah.
So
You're speaking to
it's that
two
connection.
things that I've talked about a lot. Number one is you're building trust. So I'll tell people all the time, and to you guys that are on this class, one of the big reasons I do this, other than educating, is I want to build trust. I want you guys to know me, that if I'm on the other side of a deal, even if you're not using me, that that I'm going to treat you fairly, and that you can always call me. And that really does give us an advantage.
Especially, if you're a listing agent who has to speak to their seller and report to their seller, and you've got 10, 11 offers, and you've done 2 or 3 deals with this one agent, and a lot of the other ones are, 1 or 2 here, but they never went well, or brand new agents and stuff. And, it's, the seller's full decision. But at the same time, you look and say, I've worked with this agent before, maybe we can get the buyer up a little bit higher, but at least that I know that agent's going to be
Yeah, it gives you
trustworthy.
context.
It's going to be a
Yeah.
comfortable sale. It's going to be a smooth transaction.
Yeah, because
stuff like
at the end of the day, it matters to you as well. Yeah, it's the seller's decision, but this is your career. You're
Yep.
not trying to waste your time.
Yep.
You have a path that you need to meander.
Yeah.
The other thing that I do, the reason why I think this is very helpful is you probably don't have as much time to dilly-dally.
No.
So staying busy is a huge benefit in this business because you're not going to overthink it.
Yep.
You're not going to underthink it. You've got the education, you've got the connections, you got the, the resources, but you're gonna have to say, all right, we've got to make a decision because I have an event at 8 o'clock that I have to go to.
Yep.
So let's do it. And I always kind of came up with that with a different perspective of like, act like you're busy. You actually are busy, which is helpful. It actually is helpful. So when I get called, if I look at the history of my text messages with you, it's like, answer this one question, here's what I think. And then I just say, yeah, you're dead on, or here's another angle on it. And then you run with it. And that is so empowering, not only just to work with you, but also for the other clients, for your clients, for the other side is we're going to say we're going to do what we say, and then we're going to move with it.
And I think it's key in this business. It's a relationship business. So
relationship business, perfect transition to the topic at hand, MLS. So here's this is the real transition. I asked you about this yesterday, this issue, and it came up because I was told, I don't know how to best explain this. So there's rules for when you post a listing as pending or pending with contingencies or closed. There are rules, and we're going to go over them.
Yep.
But when I got word that someone was violating those rules, potentially, I'm a lawyer, so I have to put those conditions on there. So someone was potentially violating those rules. And I said, ask the agent. I said, put this information in front of them and give them this information that they really do need to post this act or pending status. And the response was, my broker looked at it and says it's fine. And so I went to you and I said, Nick, here's something I'm seeing. I have some concerns about it. And he says, well, who's the broker? And I told him who the broker was. He said, no way in hell.
I said, at my house, I'd bet Christian's house, the fact that broker did not.
He bet my house that that broker did not say that. No chance. And so context is key in so many ways. I firmly believe if you didn't know who this other broker was, if you weren't as involved as you are, you wouldn't have that context, and you just take it at face value. It's like, oh, well, maybe he's right.
Yeah.
Alternatively, it's like, no, that's not possible. And it gave us direction, it gave us purpose, and it motivated us to do this class, which I'm excited about. So here's the issue. And when we go through scenarios, I was always taught, and the thing that I love to do is issue spot. That is number one rule in this book, in this game, is we got to know the issues. We don't have to know the answer.
Yeah.
That's what President is for. That's what I'm for. You don't have to know the answer, but you do have to spot the issues, because if you don't spot the issue, we're dead in the water.
Yeah.
The issue can balloon. It can become much worse than it should have been.
Any business, if you don't know there's a problem.
So here's the issue. When you accept an offer. So actually, let's back up. You put the house on the market. We're on MLS, multiple listing service. That's what it stands for, right?
Yes.
Perfect. So you put it active on MLS. Other agents see it. You get an offer. You pick one. You go under contract. It may have contingencies. It may be no contingencies. What is the rule that MLS says that the listing agent has to do upon accepting an offer?
Upon an offer being accepted.
On an offer being accepted,
they have 3 business days to mark that property pending, either pending with contingency or pending if there are no contingencies with it.
Where does that rule come from?
That is in so each board of MLS, in this case NABOR, which is the one I belong to, of course, we have our own rules and regulations. A lot of these rules are probably, I would say 80 to 90% of these rules are dictated through NAR, rules that you have to have. The remaining 10, 20% or so are local rules that you can modify and change. This is one that our co-op, being the Fort Myers Royal Palm Board, the Bonita Board, and the Naples Board, all agree where our rules are. You have 3 business days to mark that property pending. And one of the biggest reasons behind that, and this is this might even be an NAR rule. I didn't even look into it, but the reason behind it is it's a misrepresentation to the general public that they see an active listing, think they can go purchase the property, but it's under contract. And, there has to be some form of grace period because there's a lot of realtors that have a lot of brokerage firms that they require the broker to be the one to change the status. Some of them have assistants and stuff like that to change the status. So they do give them a cushion, if you will, of 3 business days, but by the end of the 3rd business day, it does need to be marked pending. Otherwise, you are in violation of the MLS rules.
So let's role play it. You accept an offer on Monday because you had a busy weekend, multiple offers. You finally pick one, you sign it on Monday. And you then, per MLS guidelines, have 3 business days. So Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. By the end of Thursday,
by the end of day Thursday, it needs to be
marked pending. And there are different options for how it's pending. And those options, those statuses, they do change over the years, but right now they're pretty standard.
Yeah, right now we have you have financing, inspection, sale of a home, sale of a buyer's home. Could be a kickout clause, which is otherwise as a first right of refusal. You've got a third party approval, which could be an attorney review. Things like it could be like a court appointed type of situation. Might have to have some other third party that has to review and approve it. Or you could have some other odd situation, which I think our MLS says see remarks, in which case you can put remarks as to what that contingency is. But those are the main contingencies that we have in ours.
So let's say we accept a deal and it's got a financing contingency. The problem that we're seeing is that listing agents are a little leery of marking it pending.
Sure.
They're especially where even if it's marking, pending with contingency, financing contingency, whatever it is, because generally what you would think is there might be a mark or stain on that listing.
Correct.
What's wrong with it? So let's say, continuing this role play, you accept that offer, it's on a Monday, they've got 7-day due diligence on a standard NABOR contract. So they've got all week to do their inspections. Separately is the financing thing, but that's going to be a couple of weeks. Buyer decides to do their inspection on Wednesday, and you have a listing agent says, oh, well, buyer's going to do their inspection Wednesday. I'll hold off on marking this pending until whenever, right? Let's wait till next week. But if they're following the rules, they know they have to get it marked by Thursday.
Correct.
As pending with contingencies. But if they don't know the rules, they're going to mark it next week after inspection period.
And I can't tell you how many times agents, they'll say, well, I don't have the deposit yet.
Well, that's a great point.
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. They haven't done their inspection yet.
Yeah, keep in mind that the contract itself and the terms of the contract have zero to do with the MLS rules. Zero. The MLS rules supersede the contract. So you can write into your contract, property will stay active for 7 days until the inspection period is over. Doesn't matter. The MLS rules still supersede the sales contracts. And sellers do not dictate the MLS rules. So when you join any board, doesn't matter which one it is, NABOR, for instance, when you join the MLS, you are agreeing to abide by those rules. And again, a seller does not dictate the MLS rules.
So we saw a contract recently that said in the other terms and conditions, seller shall be permitted to continue marketing the house as active in hopes of securing a backup offer. That's generally what it said.
I've seen that a few times.
Yeah. So so it's like, all right, well, it's in the contract. Obviously, they can extend it. They can wait the 3 days, or maybe they just don't even realize the 3 days. That's not something that you can override.
Correct.
MLS isn't going to give you a waiver. NABOR is not going to give you a waiver. There's no way you. The only thing is that all of a sudden you're in violation. The seller won't care.
Nope.
And that's the other problem is the sellers, I think you and I talked about it, sellers are dictating too many deals and which ones, not just like which ones to accept, but like how it's marketed and
correct
pricing and commissions. And they're just.
It definitely seems where sellers seem to be more in control of the realtor versus the realtor in control of the seller or the buyer. And it's,
And I always say for myself, the number one rule is I don't fight with my clients.
Correct.
That's a good rule to have.
I think so too.
But I do like educating them. and I'm not a pushover. So if you want to do something, I'm going to say, okay, that's always going to be my first answer. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. Happy to. But have you considered all the scenarios? You know, option 1, option 2, option 3. My suggestion is always going to be option 3 because of these reasons. Do you still want to do yours? Do you still want to do it your way?
Yeah.
And then if I need to say, look, you want to do that, that's fine. In fact, I had a deal yesterday where the seller was adamant of taking it out of his trust prior to closing and put it into his name personally. And I think there are a lot of attorneys, a lot of people that would just say, yes, sir, may I have another?
Yeah.
What I did instead is I called him, I said, what's going on? You know, it's kind of like if you go to the mechanic and you say, rotate the tires.
Mhm.
I don't know what a tire is, and I'm telling the mechanic what to do.
Yeah.
Instead, what I should do is like, hey, I'm worried about the shuttering of the tire, or the wear isn't right, or whatever. I should tell them, what would you recommend?
Mhm.
And then you take the information and then you do it.
Okay.
I would suggest the same thing, and that's what, as realtors, as attorneys, we need to help our clients make the best decision, their decision, but help them make it.
Correct.
All right, so the really important question, we've gotten to the big part, which is 3-day rule.
Mhm.
I will just warn you, and we'll go over this. There are fines if you violate this rule.
Or any MLS rule. Yeah.
Or any MLS rules. There's a whole appendix of this fine, this rule, this violation, first offense, second offense, third
Like
offense.
95 pages long.
It's a lot. There's a whole appendix just for the violations for individual rules.
Correct.
How do we overcome this? You're a great listing agent. I mean, potentially, right? You're okay.
I have my moments.
You have your moments. You have a very good track record of getting deals under contract and getting them closed. And in this class, I've always talked about it's a 3-headed monster.
Yep.
It's get under contract, protect your client, and get it closed. You have to do all 3. You can't miss one. So in that sense, you're presented with this issue of, I'm just not in love with this buyer. We've been messed around before by other buyers. This house has been harder to sell. I want to wait as long as possible to list it pending.
Mhm.
And then all of a sudden you need to list it pending. How do you overcome it? How do you sell it? Do you overthink it? I mean, we talked about that earlier. You try not to overthink it, but how do you overcome a house that's come off the market and then has to go back on, trying to accept new offers?
As a listing agent?
As a listing agent, how do you overcome it?
And of course, it's a common question that you'll get from the buyer's agent. So, I saw it was pending, why did it fall
What
apart?
happens?
As a buyer's agent side, I always look to see how long was it pending. If it's in that, 3 to 15 day period, most likely it was for inspection. It could have been, condos where you have the 3-day right of rescission.
Could have been a deposit issue.
Could have been. Usually obviously that'll be on this, 3-4 day quicker. Of course, as everyone knows, somewhere in that 25 to 35 day range is most likely going to be financing. So I just kind of look at those and take them, with a grain of salt. I thought I, tell my buyers what I'm looking at. It went pending twice, looks like it fell apart twice, probably around the financing side of things. But still, I always call the listing agent just to find out and ask them. And, representing the buyer side, if I'm a single agent, I'm going to try to find out what leverage I can. Transaction agent, your job is to get the deal closed. On the listing side, I'm straight up honest with the buyer's agents. I tell them what happened with it. The buyer did their inspections and they weren't comfortable with it, or buyer found something and they, in our opinion, as the seller side, they were asking for egregious repairs to be made, and outside of the context of the contract, and it was going to become a bigger argument. We agreed to terminate the.
Have you ever shared previous inspection reports?
If I do, I ask the seller first.
Good.
It's always up to the seller. In their minds, if they feel that the inspection report is fair, even if it has defective items in there, that are damaged or whatever, it's if they feel it's a fair inspection, yes. If they feel that, wait a second, that's not even broken. Why is that on there? Or that's a cosmetic item. Why is that on there? You'll get some sellers that say, well, I'd rather not that be shared. I'd rather let the new buyer do their own. The times that I have shared it, I've also said to the buyer's agent, look, here is the last one that was done. It's up to your buyer whether or not they want to use this, get their own inspection. I would encourage a new inspection no matter what, personally, if I'm on the buyer side of it, just because I would want, my buyers to have a full, unbiased look at that property. And when you're spending $300,000 to $3 million or more, you want to know what it is that you're buying.
Yeah.
So,
no
I
kidding.
mean, so I have had them shared before, yes.
Perfect. So, all right. It's kind of a no nonsense approach. It really is. We don't have time to overthink it. We have to, we follow the guidelines. We can stretch it as much as 3 days.
Mhm.
What
3 days,
happened?
yeah.
What could you imagine? I can't imagine this has happened to you, but maybe it has. You don't mark it pending. We go under contract Monday. This is that role play.
Okay.
Go to contract Monday. We have till Thursday. We wait.
Mhm.
They do their inspection on Tuesday, or whatever happens, and then you keep showing the property because that's your intent. And I'm not saying you do this, but I have seen a lot of listing agents are like, look, we're just maximized. We need to get as many bodies in here as possible.
Mhm.
Maybe even accepted the offer on a Friday, and you've got appointments signed up already.
Yeah.
So now you're on the buyer side.
Mhm.
Selling agent Nick shows up to the open house that's been hosted, and you spend your whole afternoon with your buyer going through it, thinking about making an offer, and you finally decide, all right, we're gonna make an offer. The buyer's excited, let's do it. And the listing agent says, oh, we accepted an offer a couple days ago. You pretty happy about that?
No.
Why? What is that? Why does that matter?
My question would be is obviously they can still hold an open house as long as that property is marked pending an MLS. They can still try to obtain a backup contract.
Yes.
And so therefore, but you cannot mislead the public.
And you are public, fellow member as well.
Whether I'm a realtor operating as, purchasing myself or, representing buyers, I'm still a member of the general public. So you cannot misrepresent that. You have to tell everybody, we have the properties under contract. We are still showing it for, to potential other buyers as backup contract opportunities, but they do have to disclose to you that the property is under contract.
Well, it's just fair.
Correct.
Right? You spent your whole Saturday, Sunday going through the property with your buyers. You spent hours and hours on this. And then you went home, you put together the offer, and you get it for signatures. The buyer, your buyers, but probably wanted to go to dinner, decided not to.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, oh yeah, no, we already accepted an offer. You have to include the backup. And your question is, well, when did you go under contract? Oh, 2-3 days ago.
Yeah.
It's incredibly irritating. So the guideline, that's our why. That's why these guidelines are here, is to protect you guys from spinning your wheels.
Mm-hmm.
And so in the scenario where you're actually under contract, you don't see the harm of it. But if you're an outside buyer, there's a ton of harm. And you're harming your other members, your other buyers. You're kind of disintegrating the integrity of the transactions of like, hey, this is on MLS and we just wasted all our time. All of a sudden, the buyers in our market are frustrated. They may pull out.
Yeah, take another step is, there could have been another property that they didn't get to go see because they wanted this one instead. Or they, it's a...
Yeah, I was just thinking about dinner,
but all of a sudden now they're, you as the buyer's agent, your buyer's upset with you because why didn't you find out it was pending? Or now they start to look at you as the problem, not the listing side. So
and
it's an uncomfortable situation to be from the buyer situation or buyer's agent is, how do you explain some of these things?
Now, from a listing,
without throwing the other realtor under the bus, even you got to be honest, but at the same time, you can't attack or slander another realtor in general. It's against the code of ethics. So
I would say the only time I've ever gotten myself in trouble was when I didn't tell the whole truth. Right. I never intentionally tried to lie or anything, but when I tried to kind of like hide something that wasn't in our favor, it always backfired. And again, the more time you have to deliberate and the more of a pushover you are on some of these sellers, the more likely you're going to make that mistake. And so I just stay away from that entirely. Jerry, I see you on there. Are you available to talk? Oh, he's available to talk. So Jerry is a broker at Downing Fry in the Bonita office. And Jerry, I'm really curious. You've been listening this whole time. You're kind of a listing guru, in my opinion. Do you have any input on this? How you would kind of sell this and how you kind of manage these issues?
Well, the biggest thing that hurts the credibility of the agents are when they're not aware of something that should have been pended or should have been done, and they show up with the customer, just what Nick was saying. I mean, all of a sudden, how come you didn't know about this? So that's the most embarrassing part of this going on. Everybody has a reason for not pending it. I have to delay it for some, they're all the wrong reasons though, based upon what the MLS rules are.
They're all
So-
wrong. There is no exemption.
Well, and,
No.
and even if you want to wait to that Thursday to market pending, and you have 3, 4, 5 showings on Monday, on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, you still have to disclose the fact that the property is under contract. You can't just let them show the property without notifying them, because otherwise you're misleading the general public, and you cannot do that. That's a violation.
You shouldn't
Go to
do it
that.
anyways. It says it pulls at your credibility. And we talked initially, trust is all you have in this business. It's the
Yeah.
only thing you literally have.
Yeah.
There is no confessional that an agent can go to and ask for forgiveness, not,
Well, that's the only reason I came to Bonita. Oh, my goodness.
okay?
So Valerie has a question next. So you can continue to show a property and or have open houses when it's marked pending in MLS.
You can, as long as you are, anything that you're doing with the general public, whether it be social media advertising, stuff like that, you can market and advertise the property.
Yeah.
It has to be marked pending in MLS, pending or pending with contingencies, whatever it is. But you have to disclose that it is under contract, and this is only purely for backup contract purposes, or backup to a backup contract, for instance.
So this one, I don't really know the exact answer on this one, but the question is, how about a listing agent that puts a listing in MLS and won't allow showings until Monday? So maybe after an open house on Sunday, one business day after putting in MLS, but it's legit per MLS rules, question mark.
So that's they're probably referring to the clear cooperation rules, which states the moment you market or advertise a property to the general public in some way, shape, or form, whether it be online, whether it be social media stuff, whether it be print advertising, whether it be flyers, whether it be open house signs, anything like that, you have to have that property in MLS within 1 business day.
Awesome. Here's the rule. Public marketing includes, but is not limited to, flyers, displays, and windows, yard signs, digital marketing, and public-facing websites, Facebook,
Mhm.
Nextdoor, I think. Brokerage website displays, digital communications marketing like email blasts, multi-brokerage listing sharing networks like MLS,
Mhm.
and application available to the general public. So if you're going to market the property, it has to go into MLS.
Within 1 business day. The moment you market to the general public or any of those ways, correct.
So the carve outs, and this is where, disclosure, double check with an attorney, right?
Mhm.
But there are potentially some workarounds, and this part's the fun part. I'm really excited about this. How do you get around some of this stuff?
Well,
Ethically.
what you are allowed to do is you're allowed to notify the agents within your brokerage firm.
So inter-brokerage.
Correct, inter-brokerage. So we see it all the time,
Yeah.
for agents, and I did it myself several times, where coming soon, this property will be hitting the market. I've got one that's coming on this coming Friday. I've notified with an in-house down in Pride about it for, I think I started last Friday about it. So you can market within your company about it, and your agents at that point, the moment an agent messes up and starts notifying the public.
It's not
then-
you.
Well, yeah. So you can also, if you have an agent, for instance, who does, primary business in that community, you can talk to that one agent specifically about it, about the property coming on, but you cannot provide any marketing, advertising, flyers, nothing of that.
Don't
can be
cross that
provided.
line in the sand.
Correct. You can notify another realtor about it. You just cannot provide any marketing materials about it.
So we sent out an article, Ross Title sent out an article, and I think my dad's on here if he wants to unmute himself, but we talked about clear cooperation, and this was something that I don't know if a lot of people loved this workaround as well, but what if the seller were to promote the property on Facebook? It's different. You're not doing it. You're not doing the public marketing. Your seller is. Dad, you're on there. I heard a clear of your throat.
I'm here.
All right. Where did that come from? Had you heard that before?
I got this from the gym on Marco Island, actually. A lady who's on the board at the Marco board talked about how they were working around this. They were, listing it on Friday, doing their open houses and so forth, and not putting it in MLS until the following Monday. And
that's, unfortunately, it is allowed per the rules. And I think many of us have seen it, ever since this clear cooperation came out 2 years ago, 3 years ago, whatever it was, there are workarounds for sure. And the primary purpose behind clear cooperation to begin with was so that every member of the general public had an opportunity to purchase any particular property that they were looking for. And whether you agree with the rule or not, I'm not sure if it really perfectly fixes the problem, because again, you can still deal with in-house. This condo I have on Friday very well could be under contract.
You want to give them the address? Is it listed in MLS?
It's in all the emails I've sent out. But it could very well be under contract before it even goes out on MLS anyways. And
Christian, Nick, the earlier question from somebody was, what happens if it's listed and then it says no showings over the weekend or for 3 or 4 days? And that stops the showings, and it could be a devious reason why they're doing it. That isn't covered under clear cooperation.
no, that's under our MLS rules. And Jerry, I cannot answer the exact. I don't have the exact answer, but I do know that is part of our MLS rules where, and maybe Mike might know it, but I see him on there also. The property has to be in withdrawn status unless it can be shown, and therefore it can be in active status. But there was a time frame that we had in there, and I honestly don't remember the time frame, but it has to be able, if the property is not able to be shown, it needs to be kept in withdrawn status if it's on the market.
And one last thing, earlier when you talked about turning over the home inspection to a buyer, let's remember that home inspection is not the seller's to turn over. It was provided by the buyer at their cost. So I don't know if it needs the approval of the buyer to turn it over or not.
I've been, my understanding, once the contract has been terminated, because that theoretically has been, the inspection report has been given to the seller side. It is now the seller's, to do what they want with if necessary.
Sellers aren't bound by the same rules,
Yeah.
so we kind of have to give them that latitude.
Yeah.
This one, I love this point, and I'm really curious your input. Some of the top listing agents in Naples simply ignore the 3-day rule, which is going to allow us to get into kind of what the violations actually are. And we'll wait until inspection due diligence period is over. As buyer agents, we aren't reporting them, as we want to maintain a good relationship. Wow, that's tricky question. How many
tricky.
fines or complaints are actually made or levied? And we talked about this very briefly as to like what the board's intentions are in these rules and how it's kind of
So
administered.
the board, at least, and I'm only speaking for NABOR, but our intention is to have good, accurate data. If a property is available, we want it to be available. If it's not available, we want it to not be available.
Do you believe in MLS generally as a great marketing tool?
It's fantastic.
I agree.
Fantastic.
I think that's key. Number one,
Yeah.
it's a great marketing tool.
But, but the problem is if, we need to hold each other accountable as realtors. And if there is a violation, you need to talk to that agent and say, look, you're in violation. Here's the rule. You need to mark it pending. And, and sometimes you hate to tattle or tattle somebody out, but at the same time, it's unethical for what they're doing. And sometimes you need to turn them in and let them learn that lesson. If they're not going to abide by the MLS rules, you have the first violation is a warning, second one's a fine, and they have to take an MLS class.
You know what I would do?
It keeps going more.
I'd blame my Qs. I would say my broker made me do it. My broker made me do it, and then I would have Mike do it for you. And that way, clean hands. Dad, is there any thought on
Blame the lawyer.
Blame the lawyer.
Blame
So
the
my
lawyer.
mom and dad said it all the time growing up. Just blame me.
Yeah.
If you're
That's
uncomfortable,
my job.
That's my job, right? That's my
Yeah.
job. Blame Christian Ross. He's the attorney. He made me do it.
We protect the realtor,
Yeah, we protect the realtor.
Yeah.
We do need this business to work well, and not being on MLS. The other side of this is we are seeing fines. There is a process for it. So I pulled up the appendix, and this is available for anyone to download. If the status is not changed within 3 business days after a new status took effect, the agent will be subject to discipline as outlined in Article 7. Article 7 then references you to the appendix. So it says the first violation and this goes to the other reason why some listing agents maybe are willing to break the rules. No first violation, no fine, you get a warning, you get a chance to cure.
Mhm.
Down at the bottom there.
That was if there was if it kept going or not.
Not really. And then the second violation is a $250 fine, which could be just because you didn't cure the default. So you can immediately get a second violation, $250 fine.
Correct.
And then mandatory MLS course, they're going to make you train for the violation you just caused. The third violation is a committee hearing. And that part I think is really interesting. You've been on those. I went to an ethics committee hearing yesterday. It's scary.
Oh, it is.
It'll freak you out.
Yes, it does.
What does it look like? Who's involved?
Well, the on the fine side, you go into a committee hearing is basically it goes before the MLS committee in this case, and they review all the violations and the fines, and obviously some of these, like first and second, there's structure as to what they are. Once you reach to a third, all of a sudden now it's the old adage of a repeat offender, and they have the authority to basically fine up to a maximum. In each section is different as to what the maximums are, but like there's some that are $15,000 fines. And at the board, fining is the last thing we want to do. We want the agents to cooperate, we want them to be fair, and we want accurate data. We do not want to fine. Unfortunately, in some situations, fining is the only way to get compliance. And it's again, it's unfortunate, but that sometimes it's
At least that ability is there, because
Yeah.
it at some point has some real teeth.
so theoretically, an agent who, let's say on one property, they end up with the first violation and they cure it. Second property, a month later, same violation, now it's their second violation of that same type of fine. You have a $250 fine in an MLS class. And 2 months later, they do it again on a third property. That's coming before the MLS committee, and there are the ability to either a hefty fine. We've had you can have MLS privileges revoked, and I think every realtor would agree. If you lose your MLS privileges, it's very
Dead in the
difficult
water.
to sell property.
Yeah.
Very difficult. So I mean, there are obviously that is an egregious violation
Yeah.
to have happen, but things like that can progress to that nature.
Yeah, and I'm glad it does. I'll give one caveat to that, or one addition to that. I was in this ethics committee hearing yesterday, and the person that made the complaint actually didn't show up. So it's intimidating.
It
And
is,
so this person decided not to show up. The committee decided to move forward without them.
and that
And
happens.
so they took over the complainant's role and said, you know what, this is enough of an issue.
Yep.
We want an answer on it.
Mhm.
That was actually kind of neat, because it's like these things, the board has the ability to kick you out. They don't want you there, they kick you out eventually. So things matter, and you mentioned it, repeat offender matters. How many times have you been in front of the board? How many times have you gotten a fine? Are you late on your payments? I'm sure it comes into it, all that.
And keep in mind, these things kind of go on your record. So even if you switch to other boards, the board has the right to request, the, so to speak, the file of a realtor. That can be in the file.
Yeah.
So
Attorneys are the same way. So, one of the things that keeps me in the straight and narrow is that if I lose my ability to practice law, I would be in real trouble. So the last thing I want is someone to complain to Florida Bar. Luckily, there's a process for it, and that my rights aren't going to be violated just immediately. So that's the
Correct.
benefit. Someone could complain about you. It doesn't end there. That's just
No.
the start.
Mhm.
And you'll have the ability to have due process. This part I thought was this question or a statement I see, especially on high-end properties, that agents put the property under withdrawn. After 2 days, they put it back as active. They do the same thing several times. You mentioned earlier, timing matters. 2 days, it's like, well, what happened? Hard to know. but-
in especially the higher end properties, it could very well that they've got, they have special guests in town and they don't want the showings to happen.
There you go.
Little things like that. It could be that they, something being, big repair job is happening.
They could be
over the course of 2
persnickety.
days.
Could be
could
a
be.
total pain in the butt
Could be.
seller.
We've all had those. But no, it can be anything like that. Any reason why the seller doesn't want the property shown or some of that, that's what the withdrawal is for.
All right, so let's finish this one up, bring it full circle. We all know we have to follow the rules.
Yes.
this was the thing, and so I was talking to a buyer's agent, and he said, all right, if we, or it might have been a listing agent on this case. He said, all right, if the rule is 3 days, what are my workarounds within those rules? How can I get this where I maybe don't have to take it off the market? And it's going to be on me. I'm just going to curious what your opinion will be on each scenario. All right, so option number 1, normal deal. So the listing agent suggested, what if we do a 3-day due diligence period as is contract? We'll know by day 3 whether the buyer's moving forward or not. It's a really good solution, but you mentioned the downside of that is what the buyer says, what the heck?
Yeah,
Now, what can you get done in 3 days on an inspection?
You're kind of throwing some red flags to a buyer as to why do they want this done so fast?
It does. It's red flag. And you mentioned mold and radon reports. You can't get those done
It's a
in
48-hour report.
48 hours. You're not doing inspection day 0. You're doing inspection day 1 or 2.
Yeah.
48 hours later, you're picking up. Oh, by the way, you still have to negotiate some sort of credit.
Well, and plus, I mean, if there are some damages to the property that need to be repaired, sometimes you may not know what the cost is going to be. You may not know the extent of it. So 3 days is very difficult. And
Very
if I'm on the
difficult.
buyer side, I'd be like,
Shows up some red flags.
the red flags, like what's wrong?
And
Why
here's
do
the
you so
trick
fast?
on a standard contract, NABOR, it doesn't stop at 3 days. So you might try to be cute and get that 3-day inspection period, but the buyer still has 5 more days to negotiate the buyer election.
Correct. They just have to have their inspections done inside that 3-day period.
Right. So you'd have to use an as is, or you're over to the FAR bar contracts, standard or as is would work. But yeah, 3 days, I'm going to kind of take that off the table unless you have it all lined up and you don't do mold and radon. Maybe you could pull it off, but that's option number 1. My suggestion was you really just need to shorten the time frame as much as possible so that future buyers aren't freaked out by how many days it was off the market.
Mhm.
So if I give you 7 days, you think you get all the inspections done generally?
It's tight, but
It's
probably,
tight. It
yeah.
gives you a week, right? You're going to be through a weekend. I've taken it off the market for a whole weekend where otherwise I would have liked to have backup offers, but I'm off the market. I'm pending. I'm giving you your chance, and I believe in you as a buyer because I don't have any other reason to think. I don't know other offer, right? But I'm going to do my due diligence to make sure, do I have proof of funds up front?
Mhm.
And that's one thing that was interesting to me coming down to Naples was the contract doesn't require proof of funds. You have to require it before you go under contract. So that's a trick. Get your proof of funds up front, get your earnest money immediately. Adding in a previous class I talked about, have the deposit made before you grant access to the property is a big one because some buyers are trying to play that game.
But again, you got to be careful with that
Oh,
dictation.
I'm getting in trouble with President of NABOR.
Well, you know your contracts too.
Jeez
So
Louise.
obviously, your one doesn't have.
Hey, I'm being reasonable, Nick.
One doesn't have anything to do with the other. You have 3 days to put in your deposit. If you want to do inspections on day 2, you can get a schedule. Well,
God
seller
bless.
has to
Good
work.
luck to you people working with this guy.
There's a lot of dining brands that would disagree with you there.
I can't wait.
But that's
And that's the great part about these contracts is that there are a million ways that you can do this.
Yeah.
But this is just to give you that perspective. So another solution, no contract. How many of your clients
contract.
do not live in Naples full time?
Oh God, full time, I would say probably 75% of them.
And
But
you're
I
a
do.
local, like you were raised here,
Mhm.
right? Were you born here?
No, moved here in 03.
03. He's as local as he gets, right? I got you beat. But so most of our buyers and sellers are transplants from other areas. And I would say you can maybe use this to your advantage. If you have a contract in New York, the typical process, and it's not always done this way, but most of the time. And Jerry, I need, are you North Jersey, Jerry, or South Jersey?
Yeah, I'm Central Jersey.
I don't know how to answer that.
How'd you miss it?
How did I miss it? All right, so Jerry, I might need your feedback on this. New York, Jersey, North Jersey at least, you're going to make an offer as a buyer. Almost think of it like a letter of intent. It's not a formal contract. It's more like purchase price, closing date, any of the general terms. And then the seller's gonna agree, verbally usually, and then you let the buyer do inspections. You have no contract.
Mhm.
You have a general idea of what the terms are, what you guys agreed to. Do your inspections, and then you come to the table and you sign a contract.
So
Yeah, I know. This is giving you pause. I'll get you
well,
a napkin.
I'll tell you this, like on the listing side, I wouldn't allow it.
Good.
And the reason being is because in the sales contract, it dictates if something happens during the inspection, the inspector or the buyer is responsible to get those repairs made. So if an inspector breaks.
God, are you a
something-
lawyer or what? Goodness gracious.
I've learned from some good lawyers, so. But
Yeah,
I mean,
there is liability for a seller.
sellers have some protection.
Seller has a
And the
liability.
listing brokers does.
So
Christian, we never ever did,
go
we
ahead.
never ever did a deal like that. I don't care how close north I was, we never did a deal like that.
All right, so let me give you a hypothetical. This actually, it's not hypothetical because it actually happened. My mother-in-law was selling her house in New York, Long Island. You ever heard of Long Island, Jerry?
Is that a drink?
Yes. It's still early. All right, so selling her house in Long Island. She has multiple showings, multiple offers. She accepts one, but it's mostly verbal. It was in an email. Hey, we'll pay 400,000. We'll close in August. We'll make a deal. So they say, great, let's do it. They let the buyer do their inspections. You know, the inspector does have liability insurance, Nick. Come on now.
Yeah, but a little harder.
I love
A little more
it.
to deal
So,
with.
so you've got the buyer does their inspections, and then they intend to come back to the seller, my mother-in-law, and to formalize the deal, sign the contract at that point. At that point, the buyer knows what's wrong with the house.
Mhm.
They know that it needs a new air conditioning, and so I'm going to need a $4,000 credit to cover the cost. Interestingly, in the meantime, seller gets another offer, $25,000 more than the previous buyer.
In writing?
Oh yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, so there you go. Can the seller accept it? Yes.
Absolutely.
So listing agent, it gives you pause. As a buyer's agent, it gives you pause. But it is done that way in other parts of the country. And if you're really worried, I think overly worried, or paranoid even, that taking the house off the market will stain it forever, then that is an option. You could just not sign a contract. I'll draft you a liability waiver, for a fee, of course. I'll protect the seller, right? And that way you can keep marketing the property. You're not in violation of MLS rules. We obviously don't love this idea. It's not a fantastic idea in this market.
I would have drastic pause for sure.
Drastic pause. All right, so that leads to the last point. Dad, are you still on there?
I'm still here.
All right, so you and I, when I first came back into Naples, we kind of enjoyed the competition of standard contract or as is.
You mean we argue like crazy?
Yes, exactly. We totally disagree. We still probably aren't on the same page on it. Does a standard contract protect the listing agent and the seller more on keeping a deal together?
It does. I mean, it has language in there.
I think statistically it does. Yeah.
Yeah, and this is just purely anecdotal, and I've had other agents tell me this. A lot of buyers don't realize, or a lot of sellers don't realize, that the buyer has the right to terminate the contract if the seller refused to make a repair or give a credit for something that's defined as defective. It's not at the top of the.
Provided it's reasonable request. Yeah, but
it's got to be, fit under the definition of defective, and so those hang together better.
As Don, as you told me one time, a 20-year-old AC system, buyer can't request a brand new AC system.
Oh yeah,
That's
the last
unreasonable.
line under that section
Unreasonable.
says that the
If I
cost
could
to
hedge
repair or
that, Nick.
replace shall not exceed the value of that
Right.
item if it were in working
To be a
condition.
tad more accurate, what I tell my buyers is, look at line 317, you're not entitled to a brand new air conditioning system, but it doesn't hurt to ask for it. If you don't ask, you don't get.
But would you say a buyer can't terminate because the seller says no?
No, he can't terminate, but
Okay.
you
That's
always
what I was-
ask for the
that's what I
sun,
was-
the
the point
moon,
I
and
was getting
stars, but you prepare your buyer that you're not entitled to this, so they don't go crazy when they don't get it.
Yeah. So if you ask for $100 credit on a 20-year-old AC system, and the seller
Yeah.
says no,
Well, then you
I
can
would
get
say
out.
buyer has right to terminate. Yes.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
And then that all goes to strategy. We like to advise people to, don't be cheap about it. If the buyer's asking for a brand new, this came up like a week ago, buyer asked for a brand new AC unit. We know line 317. We don't want to give them $20. That's probably what it's worth. It was 26 years old here in Naples. It's worth about $20, if that. In fact, seller might have to pay the buyer, to take over this.
Yeah.
But giving them $20 is a slap in the face and makes it worse. So I always say, $500, right?
You
Right.
also have to, Christian, if I could, look at is the second deposit down, because that'll dictate how much teeth the contract really has. And
Yep.
then also the size of the deal. If you're dealing with a $5 million deal and you're refusing to do some minor repair, that's almost a slap in the face to the buyer, who's a wealthy person.
Mhm.
And those people do things on principle, and they don't care about the money so much.
It's case by case basis as to what's
Yes.
reasonable.
Love it.
Sure.
Following up, someone says, I'm suspicious that the agent has his own buyer and does not want to have another agent in between, puts it on withdrawn and sees what happens. You don't need to discuss this, but that's what might be happening. Yeah, it happens quite a bit.
Theoretically, I mean, it could be, I mean,
I don't get it. Why would you put it? I mean, maybe
you're hurting yourself.
you're hurting your seller. You're manipulating the seller.
Hurting yourself. I mean, if somebody files, complaint against you, you better have your paperwork that shows the seller and the broker signing that withdrawn form. Seller and broker signing reactivation form. So you better have your paperwork if you're trying to do those things.
Well, Mike will just post date everything, right? He'll do that.
Jerry will too.
Yeah, Jared will post date. So there you go. There you go. Well,
need
I
to-
hope
I need to
everybody
unmute
really enjoyed
myself.
this topic. What was that, Mike?
I need to unmute myself on that one.
All right,
Dated,
guys.
never
So thank
dated.
you for joining us.
I think Mike-
Nick Bobzien. Yeah,
Yeah.
Mike, you got something else?
Nope, just, I don't post date.
Yeah.
No post dating. So
Smart. Keeps you out of trouble.
Nick Bobzien, President of NABOR, Downing Fry. If you need me, Christian Ross at Ross Title, Don Ross at Ross Title, Jerry Murphy at Downing Fry, Mike Hughes at
And I
Downing
would
Fry.
say a quick plug at 2:00 today, NABOR, we have the 2022 year-end market conference report, and
Oh, it's on that.
our very own Mike Hughes will be one of our panelists as well. So it's a great report. It'll give you guys good analysis of what happened in 2022.
Did you
So
talk
we
about-
have close to 400 people attending by Zoom and in person. So it's going to have a wealth of information.
Yeah, so if you got, it goes from 2 to 3:30. It may not quite go that long, but ballpark. So if you got the time, it'd be wise to attend either Zoom or in person. So
All right, so I did a poll. You guys probably aren't going to see it. How many days do you have to update your listing? 3 business days. Second one, who does it hurt if you do not update the status of your listing? Pretty much everybody. You have to select all of them. And then who is the NABOR president, Nick Bobzien or Christian Ross? You better get that one right. All right, guys.